Test, test. Yep. Test, test. Test 1, 2. 1, 2, test. Test, test, test. Test, test. Test, test. Test 1, 2. 1, 2, test. Test, test, test. Test, test, test. Test 1, 2.
Kevin. I'm good. How are you? All right. I'm going to mute and get off the camera.
Hi, Kevin. It's Kevin. Yes, it is. All right, Chief Utaro is also going to be here today.
All right, good. All right. See you in a bit.
Hey, Kevin, Sean, Sally, can you hear me? Great. No, I do. I'm just on, I'm just a little shy here today. Thank you, sir.
Kevin, you there? Okay, good. I'm just doing a functions check here, volume check.
Hold on. No, just tell me. Is he? What's his last name?
Shantz, Schantz. He sent it Friday
Got it.
2:57.
Got it. This is.
It's got the two attachments with what your.
Kevin, did you mute everything? Okay. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Kevin.
Kev, can you hear me? Oh, okay. I was just checking my sound. I couldn't hear anything. You must have. Gotcha. Yeah, probably not. So anyway, all righty. Just checking in.
Invite all legislators to come to the chambers and join us to begin the meeting. right. I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask Legislator Arnie Drucker to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing for a moment of silence. This past weekend, or late last week, William Johnson of Glen Cove passed away, one of the Tuskegee Airmen. He obviously served with distinction and honor in World War II, as did his two brothers. He came back to Long Island. He was active in the NAACP and many different community organizations in Glen Cove. He's received the Congressional Gold Medal. He was recognized by D.A. Singas a couple years ago, and last year he was one of our honorees for Black History Month. He was alien, could not make it at that time. He's truly an American hero. I would ask you to keep him in your thoughts and him and his family in your thoughts and prayers. Thank you. Mike, could you call the roll?
Yes, sir. Roll call. The Deputy Presiding Officer, Howard Coppell. Alternate Deputy Presiding Officer, Denise Ford. Legislator, Sela Bino. Thank you. Legislator, Carrier Solage.
Here.
Thank you. Legislator, Deborah Muley.
Here.
Legislator, C. William Gaylord III.
Present.
Legislator, Vincent Muscarella.
Here.
Legislator, Ellen Birnbaum.
Here.
Legislator, Delia DeRigi Whitten. Legislator, James Kennedy. Legislator, Thomas McKevitt. Legislator, Laura Schaefer. Legislator, John Ferretti. Legislator, Arnold Drucker. Legislator, Rosemarie Walker. Legislator, Joshua Lafazan.
Here.
Thank you. Legislator, Stephen Rhodes. Minority Leader, Kavan Abrahams.
Here.
Presiding Officer, Richard Nicolello. We have a quorum, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a couple of items of public comment which have been submitted to the clerk's office, both dealing with the COVID vaccination program, one of which was does not have a name attached to it, but still part of the record, and the second of which was submitted by Tom McMahon of the City of Glen Cove. Again, both will be submitted for the record. They've been distributed to the legislators, and that's it for public comment at the moment. There are a number of items on this calendar that are part of the consent calendar that the majority and minority have agreed can be voted upon without any further debate or discussion. These items went through committees a couple of weeks ago, and they are, again, ready to be voted on without further debate or discussion. Starting with item number 9, Ordinance 12, 10, Ordinance 13, 11, Ordinance 14, 12, Ordinance 15, 13, Ordinance 16, 14, Ordinance 17, 15, Resolution 15, 16, Resolution 16, 17, Resolution 17, 18, Resolution 18, 19, Resolution 19, 20, Resolution 20, 21, Resolution 21, 22, Resolution 22, 23, Resolution 23, and 24, Resolution 24, moved by Deputy Presiding Officer Coppell, seconded by legislator DeReggie Whitten. Any debate or discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those items carry unanimously. Number 1 is a hearing on a proposed local law to amend the county government law of Nassau County in relation to the establishment of an independently elected assessor. Need a motion to open the hearing, which is moved by Legislator Ford, seconded by Legislator Schaefer. All in favor of opening the hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Carries unanimously. I'm just going to say a few words and then put it out. I know there's several legislators that want to speak on this. This would create a referendum, which would be voted upon in June, go before the public of Nassau County to determine whether or not they would like to return to an elected assessor for the county. If successful, the first election in which an elected assessor would run would be in this November. There would be a term associated with that, but thereafter the assessor would run every 4 years. We had proposed this 2 years ago. It had been approved by the legislature. We were not successful in overriding the county executive's veto. The one reason the county executive gave for not supporting this measure, it was because she believed an elected assessor was required to have A, assessing background, assessing experience, and B, the certifications required by law. Well, the county executive has now proposed somebody for that position that has neither of those things. So those are no longer a basis to turn this down. Again, this is a good government initiative. It gives the people the right to decide whether this shall be an elective office or not. An elected assessor would be more responsive to the people, as has been in the past. An elected assessor is someone who would, we believe, administer a department which would include people with all of the correct certifications, and the assessor himself or herself would ultimately be required to get those certifications. So we believe this is a good government initiative, and we advocate you to support the same. Legislator Rhodes, did you have anything to add? Then Minority Leader Abrahams and Legislator Drucker.
Of course, thank you, Mr. Presiding Officer. As the presiding officer indicated, 2 years ago we brought up the elected assessor as a possibility, and we wanted to give the residents the opportunity to be able to choose for themselves the form of government that they would have, specifically with respect to assessment. Until, I believe, until the tail end of the Swazi administration, when the referendum was first advanced to create or take away the position of elected assessor and make that position appointed, the argument was that you would take politics out of the position, and that it would enable the assessor to do the work of assessing. What we have seen, certainly over the course of the time since we've gone to an appointed assessor, and particularly during the period of time where we had Assessor David Moog, is that what resulted was an assessment that was filled with errors, but more concerning than that, because mistakes sometimes happen, was a process that had a complete lack of transparency. There were 30-some-odd meetings that were scheduled, community meetings that were scheduled, dates, times, locations that were established to explain to the public how the reassessment was going to be conducted, explain to the public how they could protect themselves and what their role was in that process. Not a single one of those community meetings, which were scheduled as part of the county executive's strategic communications plan, not a single one of those meetings actually transpired. We had lawsuits brought by homeowners to force the county assessor and the county executive to disclose the formula by which the Department of Assessment calculated home values as part of the reassessment. We actually, Legislator Ferretti and myself, actually had to institute an Article 78 proceeding, a lawsuit against the county executive and the Department of Assessment, which is pending in the Supreme Court in Nassau County right now, to force the assessment department to put information back on the website so that homeowners could see what the full effect of the 5-year phase-in would be with respect to their taxes. So whether it was errors in tax impact notices, whether it was errors in actual assessment calculations with respect to, and evaluations with respect to individual homes, or whether it was what we had a press conference on this morning, which was people who won reductions in their assessment, those new assessment reductions not being reflected in the new roll for no earthly reason that I can understand. We have seen in an appointed assessor someone who is completely out of touch and does not have to answer to the public because they answer only to the county executive. And so this experiment that we've tried now for the better part of the last 20 years is, in my view, an experiment that's failed. And giving our residents the opportunity to have an assessor that is chosen by them and works for them is an opportunity the public should have. And again, this hearing and this particular piece of legislation does not mandate there being an elected assessor. It simply gives the voters the opportunity to choose for themselves what they would want to have. And as the presiding officer indicated, the county executive's excuse when we raised this 2 years ago was that, well, you wouldn't have an assessor that has the necessary qualifications to be an assessor, potentially. In other words, I don't trust the voters to make a good choice. Well, as it turns out, we now have an assessor designate from the county executive who also doesn't possess the qualifications to be an assessor. So, that excuse no longer holds water. It is the people of Nassau County who pay the salaries around here, and it is the people of Nassau County that should have a voice in how they want their government run. And that's why I would strongly encourage each and every one of my fellow legislators to support giving the people of Nassau County the opportunity to have their voices heard through a referendum. Thank you.
Thank you. Minority Leader Abrahams.
I'm trying to get my camera to work properly. I don't know if you guys can see me correctly in the legislature, but thank you, Presiding Officer, for giving me an opportunity to speak. I want to say from the outset, I'm encouraging my colleagues in the minority to vote against this proposal. But before I get into my reasoning why, I do share and hope for, obviously, a spirited debate today, which I'm sure this will bring about. That being said, let's just go down memory lane. And there's very few of us at the legislature actually have the time in the legislature, the tenure in the legislature to really know this. When we had an elected assessor quite some time ago, many of the issues that continue to be constant problems for our county were tremendous. We were spending hundreds of millions of dollars, probably over $1 billion over a 10-year time frame in tax certiorari claims. We had to be ordered by the court to do a full-scale reassessment. The last thing we want to do is politicize an office that is so closely tied to fairness in our system to make sure taxpayers are paying their fair share. The last thing we want to do is set up a process or a system where taxpayers are taking it out on an elected official because, quite frankly, they could be justifiably having their assessment go up. The last thing you want to be able to do is have an elected official that makes decisions, God forbid us, based off of those political outcomes. The bottom line for us is very clear. We do not need to politicize this office. Now, I understand that this would be a referendum and you're giving the people the choice to be able to vote for whether or not they want an elected assessor. I have to say, to some degree, the majority is being a bit disingenuous. And the reason I say that is because we had the opportunity to give the public an opportunity to vote for an independent inspector general. And instead of giving the public the opportunity every step of the way through the previous administration and through the majority, we were blocked. We went out and we secured with many residents, thousands and thousands of signatures, and still it was blocked. So this argument that we're going to give people the opportunity to vote for what they want to see in their government is great. I just would have loved to have seen you do it then. I would have loved to have seen the opportunity for the public should get that opportunity to do so then. And now it just seems like we are using it in an election year where we had 8 years under the previous administration, 8 years to fix the assessment system. Unfortunately, the position of the previous administration, as well as the position of the majority, was to give people refunds unjustifiably. So if you filed a tax claim or you filed a grievance, you got a refund. Everyone got a refund, which continued to exacerbate the problems with our system. There was never been anyone, whether it was the previous administration or elected assessors going back to Charlie O'Shea, that ever wanted to go and fix the problem itself. That is the last thing we need. The assessment system is going to continue to evolve. It's going to continue to need attention and guidance, and we do not need to politicize this office at this time. And I trust that the taxpayers of this county understand that, and they have put their trust in the county executive to be able to carry through this process. But I am encouraging my colleagues in the minority to vote against this proposal because it speaks to every single it speaks to the politics, unfortunately, of the county, and we will be politicizing this office tremendously and setting back this department even more. Thank you.
Legislator Drucker.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. The majority has spent a tremendous amount of time critiquing, questioning the validity and accuracy of the models used by the Department of Assessment in arriving at the reevals and the reassessment of 400,000 properties here in Nassau County. And some of the errors that occurred, all of which had to do with technical errors. It is completely, in my opinion, naive and simplistic to conclude that these errors would not have occurred if our assessor was elected rather than appointed, which David Moog was after being confirmed by this legislative body after careful vetting and concluding in a bipartisan manner that David Moog was eminently qualified. To render the county assessor an elected position immediately transforms that position into a political one in which that person will have to run for the office as a member of a political party, which he or she will then be beholden to, admittedly or not, if they are elected. The assessment process has some errors. There's no question about it. We're not disputing that. But you've heard time and again, the margin of error was well within the standards of reassessment that have occurred throughout this country. And in fact, they've been below. And we've also heard that the offers of settlement from ARC have predominantly been no offers, no offers of settlement at all, relatively keeping everything the same. So the theory about making the head of a particular department subject to election, it doesn't make sense. In my opinion, you know, we've had situations here where we have to approve settlements for police misconduct, lawsuits, and we have to approve these settlements. Under that theory, if there were an abundance of settlements and that indicated that the police commissioner wasn't doing a great job, do we now make that department head an elected position? What about we had DSS and we've had incidents of child abuse that were horrific? And so now what do? If you're unhappy with the commissioner of social services handling these cases, do we now make that position an elected position? Where does it end? And I think it defeats the whole purpose of county government. There has to be in a way that elected positions are elected positions. Our county executive is an elected position. We can vote every election period for that, but if you start politicizing department heads, it's a slippery slope that we're going to go down. And I just think this is a knee-jerk reaction without really a defensible position. Thank you.
Legislator Ferretti.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I think we've been, my position on this has been pretty clear from the beginning. This is an assessor and an administration that has essentially hid refuse to hold public meetings, refuse to be accountable, refuse to even answer their phones. That's why we need an elected assessor. But we can't, I'm not even going to focus on the fact that we need an elected assessor, because what we need to do is give the residents a voice, give them a chance to have a say as to whether we have an elected assessor or not. The minority leader a few minutes ago indicated that he trusts the residents of Nassau County. So do I. I trust them to decide whether or not they want to continue on with an appointed assessor or they want to change things and have somebody who is accountable to the residents. I don't know why the minority and the county executive don't trust the residents to make the choice. I don't know what you're all scared of here. If everything the county executive and the assessor is saying is true, and this reassessment has been so fair, accurate, and transparent, then there should be no issue in the referendum. I'm sure that since the minority leader and the minority and the county executive trust the Nassau residents to make the proper choice, they'll do so. I do. If we have this referendum and the residents vote for an appointed assessor, God bless, we'll continue forward. But why are we not giving them that opportunity? What is the downside to letting the residents have a voice in this process? Because I can tell you right now, the only voice they've had in the process so far is by town hall meetings held by legislators. And that's a shame, because none of us are assessors. None of us have the qualifications. Residents deserve answers. The 65% of residents that are seeing a tax increase as a result of this reassessment, they deserve answers. The 35% that are seeing reductions, but not full reductions as to what they're actually entitled to, they deserve answers. And they sure as heck deserve the phone when they call to be picked up. But they haven't gotten that. And then when we put forward a bill that would have fixed some of these bills, that would have fixed some of these atrocities, we got no support from the other side. The county executive vetoed them. I mean, this has been an embarrassment. And now we're gonna hear once again that there's no support on the other side or from the county executive possibly for an elected assessor after the very reason they said that we can't have an elected assessor has been proven to be nonsense. It's a shame. Legislator Drucker just talked about an elected official. If it's an elected official, they'll be beholden to a political party. I reject that completely. I'm an elected official. I'm not beholden to my political party, and I'm sure you would agree, Legislator Drucker, you're not either. So why is there this presumption that just because the people are going to have an opportunity to put someone in power, someone who in the assessment department who actually lives in Nassau County, who actually has a stake in this process, just because we want to give the opportunity for residents to decide if that's what they want, that position is going to be beholden to a party? That's not true at all. That's not true at all. And I wouldn't say that to any of the legislators on this dais, that simply because they're elected by the people, they're beholden to a party. And I think it's a shame that you feel that way. And in terms of Legislator Drucker, you indicated that you look at the amount of reduction offers from ARC, and there's been mostly zeros. It's simply not true. I mean, if you look at the 22-23 assessment roll and the reductions at ARC, we had Mr. May here just a month ago, and he indicated that over 200,000 offers of reduction had been made. Now, the year before, there were 240,000 total offers. So if we assume there's about the same amount there were over 240,000 grievances. If we are to assume in 22-23 they were about the same, which is probably not true because less people grieved, that's over 85% of people that grieved for 22-23 were receiving a reduction from ARC. So the idea that this assessor has gotten everything right, I think is absolutely not, it's kind of laughable. And it's simply not the facts. The facts are that 85% of residents in Nassau County that grieve for 22-23 are receiving a settlement offer. Okay? So, look, I don't want to keep repeating myself here, but I think it's pretty clear we have a difference of opinion as to whether residents, the actual ones who are facing these increases, should have a say in this process. I have no idea why the minority or the county executive, if they're so confident in this reassessment, would have any issue going forward with a referendum. I don't know what you're scared of, and I guess we'll find out. Thank you.
I have Legislator Birnbaum has a comment or a question.
Yes. I have to agree with my colleagues, Ms. Legislator Drucker and Legislator Abrams, that this is politicizing the assessor's office. When I first came to the legislature, we had an individual serving as the acting assessor for years, who certainly did not have the qualifications, who was sitting with a frozen tax roll. Nothing was changed for years. And then when I pointed this out, I attempted to initiate legislation that would not have anybody sitting as an acting commissioner for more than 6 months. That's exactly the terms that I used when I proposed such legislation. This piece of legislation went nowhere until December of the last month of the former administration, when it was passed by all. So in other words, when our new county executive came to office, it would be clear that anybody she appointed as a commissioner would have to be approved by the full legislature within 6 months. So she did that. She found an assessor. She went about it the way you're supposed to. You're required. You're supposed to look for a qualified person. And there weren't that many applicants, if I recall, that even came forward who's qualified. And certainly many of them did not live in Nassau County. I'm not even sure if any of them did, maybe one or two. But the point is, A, that it isn't a political position. It's somebody who's doing the job for the county to get the assessment right, to make it accurate. And since this administration came into office, they just continued the job that had been started previously to do a reassessment of all the properties. This was something in the works for years. We just continued it, and finally it came to be. And yes, there were mistakes, and there are always when there's a new assessment. But I believe they were handled appropriately. As soon as there was an error, whether it was a computer glitch or something that was pointed out, they were corrected. So this assessor, yes, has done his job, and there have been problems, but more or less we have achieved what we've set out to do, to make a current roll that reflects the market values for properties in Nassau County in 2020, 2021. We've come up to the times that we're supposed to. So of course it's been fraught with problems. People could politicize it, but at this point there's no reason to change the system.
Legislator DeRidge Whitten.
Thank you. I think that the major problem still goes back to the fact that the roll was frozen for almost a decade, and that it seems as though the grievance process was almost automatic. Once someone grieved, they would get a reduction, and those that didn't, weren't treated the same way. Look, I had issues with this reassessment or reevaluation, whatever it's technically called, and I wasn't happy with a lot of the things that happened, especially in the beginning. But I will say that I do think that the assessment department has been working to correct the roll. The bottom line is the roll is the whole game. The roll has to be correct for it to work, and of course, it's a daunting task to get all 400,000 homes evaluated. And in the beginning, I think there were a lot of things that had to be worked on, and I know that since then a number of adjustments have been made. Is it a perfect system? Absolutely not. But I think right now we're on the right path, and I think that we should just allow it some time to get settled and to correct itself, as I think it is. And hopefully at that point we'll be in a better position. But again, I really think the issue is it takes a little time to correct a roll that's been frozen for 10 years.
I would want to make a couple of points in response to some of the arguments that have been made. First, I don't agree that making a position an elected official, making an office holder an elected official, is politicizing the office. It's making somebody directly accountable to the voters. While we don't have an elected police commissioner in Nassau, the fact of the matter is, for example, in Suffolk, they have an elected sheriff. And that's actually something that we should look at doing at some point. I would also distinguish the position of assessor from the Department of Social Services, for example. We do have elected assessors throughout the county, throughout the state. We still have them, as we had for years. I don't believe there's ever been a Department of Social Services that's been an elected position. In terms of the history, there wasn't an order back when we first did reassessments some 20 years ago. There was a lawsuit, and the administration and the elected assessor consented to proceed with the reassessment at the time. The elected assessor made that determination. Some of us in the legislature disagreed at the time and voted against it, but it was not something that we were ordered to do by the court. We consented to that. A number of legislators have pointed to the previous administration and the record and history of the previous administration. I would point out that under the previous administration, you had an official who was an appointed official. So the argument that, well, the record of the previous administration was poor is actually an argument for an elected official, elected assessor, who would be responsible and responsive to the public as opposed to one official, the county executive. I think the most important arguments in favor of this are transparency and accountability. The transparency of this department has been woeful. The mailings have been terrible. The meetings have been limited. You know, when you had an elected assessor, a Democratic elected assessor, Harvey Levinson, and reassessment was underway, he went all over the county. I would say that the vast majority, I mean, we're talking about 99.9%, never saw Mr. Moog. He simply had no reason to go out to the public to answer the questions. He only had one person he had to worry about, which was the county executive. And again, in terms of accountability, you need someone who's going to have to answer to the public. I think that in this office, more than any other office, which deals directly with how much taxes people are going to pay, the people should have a say. The last point I would make is this. The appointed assessor came in as a result of a referendum about 10, 12 years ago, which was initiated by the Democrat-controlled majority of the legislature and approved by the Democrat county executive. So apparently, a dozen years ago, the legislators and county executive trusted the people. They went to a referendum. They gave it to the people to decide, we want to do the same thing. It's unfortunate, in my opinion, that trust apparently has eroded on the other side of the aisle. I know that Minority Leader Abrahams has another comment to make.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Presiding Officer. I noticed we're throwing out the word trust quite a bit. And I asked the question again, when the minority proposed the independent inspector general to be able to go to a referendum so that we can have transparency in the light of the corruption that was occurring with the previous administration as well as other elected officials throughout Nassau County, it was blocked. And for 8 years, the majority and the previous administration did nothing in regards to an elected assessor when we knew that that system was subject to fail. We were giving out unjustifiable refunds to people that didn't deserve them. And we know that now because we had to fix that through the current assessment issue. But I just find it very astonishing that we are throwing out the words trust when we talk about the taxpayers of this county. I trust, and from my conversations with the taxpayers and residents that I speak to, I trust that they see right through this. At the end of the day, that this is nothing but a political stunt. We are politicizing this in an election year to try to hurt the county executive, not try to fix the system, not try to make sure everybody's paying fairly what they should be paying. We're politicizing it. If this was such a great idea, I asked you the question, why didn't you bring it up in the 8 years under the previous administration? Wreaked havoc on the system by freezing the assessments, which every single professional will tell you was the wrong way for the county to go. Not one municipality would tell you that that's the right decision to do. But we did nothing. The majority did nothing. The previous administration did nothing. And now we want to say, well, what are you scared of? Don't you trust the taxpayers? I trust and know that the taxpayers will see through this, that they will not have the wool pulled over their eyes, that they understand that it's an election year, that the county executive is up, the 19 of us are up, and if you want to get reelected, you got to run on your own merit. You can't run on some issue that you're going to try to politicize and tap into the hearts and minds of our taxpayers. They're too smart for that, and they're going to see right through this. And I encourage the majority, though I know it won't happen, to pull this proposal back. There's enough politics that goes on in this county, and quite frankly, throughout And we just have to be able to roll up our sleeves and focus on what the taxpayers need, which is telling them the truth as it pertains to a system that is going to be fair and equitable in how they pay taxes.
Okay. Legislator Schaefer.
If you're so sure they're going to see right through it, then let the referendum go. Let it be put out there. And let me remind you that the county executive has now frozen the roll again. So, you know, here we are. I agree with my colleagues on the majority.
Legislator Ferretti.
I feel like we're in denial, or at least the other side of the aisle is. The reality is we have a frozen roll right now. We have mass settlement right now. And we have a proposed assessor with no qualifications right now. Now, I wasn't here for the 8 years that you're referring to, Minority Leader, but if you're making the case that there should have been a referendum then, what the heck's the difference now? We've got all the things that were going on for those 8 years right now. And, you know, it's time. It's time to give the residents a voice. It is time to trust the residents to make the right decision. And I'm willing to acquiesce to whichever decision they make.
All right. Legislator Rhodes.
And you know what else we also have right now? An inspector general. And so if you're going to sit here and say that the majority made a mistake over the course of the 8 years of the previous administration by not putting up a referendum for an inspector general, why would you make the same mistake now with respect to the assessor? Give the people a voice. Give them the opportunity to choose for themselves. Ultimately, that's what this is about. Give them a say in their own government. And this referendum provides them the opportunity to do that. If we're saying that we trust the public, let's trust the public and give them a vote and give them a voice.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Motion to close the hearing by Deputy Presiding Officer Coppell, seconded by Legislator Ford. All in favor of closing the hearing signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Aye. Hearing is closed. We go to item 4, which is a vote on a proposed local law to amend the county government law of Nassau County in relation to the establishment of an independent elected assessor. That is moved by Legislator Rhodes, seconded by Legislator Ferretti. I take it we've all had our say, so there's no further need for debate or discussion at this time. So I'm just going to call for a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Nay. That is that passes by a vote of 11 to 8. So the vote is adopted. Moving on to the second hearing. This is item number 2. It's a local law to establish the dangerous dog registry and to require certain notice with respect thereto. That is moved by Legislator Ferretti, seconded by Legislator Rhodes, Legislator Walker, actually, to open the hearing. All in favor of opening the hearing signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Hearing is now open. Legislator Ferretti.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. So this bill essentially provides notice to Nassau residents of a dangerous dog designation by a court. When there's an attack and the police are called, there's a determination by a judge as to whether a dog should be returned to the community. Often when they are, they're deemed judicially dangerous. Certain restrictions and requirements are put on that animal. For example, they must wear a muzzle when they're outside, they must be spayed or neutered, there must be signage placed in the property where they're housed, there must be locks put on the gate, etc. That's always put within the order that's issued by a judge deeming a dog dangerous. And what a judicially dangerous dog is essentially a dog that's on probation. So there's a certain amount of time that's given to the dog to be deemed dangerous, whether it's a year or 2 years, something different than that. And if there's another attack within that period, then the dog is removed. What this bill does is it sets up a registry, a database online, that the SPCA will be putting together that would put all the dangerous dog orders and the information about that dangerous dog, including their breed, gender, weight, details about the attack, etc., on this database. This will allow residents to have, all residents of Nassau County, to be aware when an attack like this happens, to make adjustments to their walking routes or the way they walk their animals, where they walk their children, etc. Additionally, on top of the registry, there will be a mailing requirement. And this requirement says that within 10 days of the SPCA notifying the resident with the dangerous dog of this law, they must do a mailing to every property owner within a 1,000-foot radius of their house or apartment. And that must give all that information that we just discussed, plus a copy of the judicial order mailed to each resident. They must then fill out and sign an affidavit before a notary public and send that affidavit to the SPCA. The affidavit will be posted on the website, and that's a way of enforcement so people will know if this affidavit was never filled out, the mailing was never done. The penalty for failing to adhere to this law would be $500 penalty if you do not do this mailing within 10 days, and then $100 for each day after. So that's a synopsis of the bill. As many of you may have heard, I know I spoke to Legislator Drucker about this, and this is a bill that's very personal to me, as I had an incident about a year and a half ago with my dog and my family. And as I've said before, and I'll say again, as frightening as the attack was, and it was a very, very traumatizing event, not just for me, but for my children and my family. What was just as traumatizing is the days after, as I was watching people from the community, the surrounding, couple blocks, walking right past where the incident happened, where this dog was returned to the house, having absolutely no idea whatsoever that there was an attack there, that there was a dog that was deemed dangerous, that's living there. And, that's what kind of brought this to light in my mind, that, people should know. I know that I know, and I certainly am aware, and if this was to happen again, God forbid, I would be ready for it. So I would ask for your support in this bill, and thank you very much.
Legislator Walker, then Legislator Drucker.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And since Legislator Ferretti and I worked on this bill, I've had many, many residents reach out and say, this bill is so important because there was an attack by a dog in my neighborhood, or my child was attacked by a dog. Even sometimes when people try their very best to keep a dog in the house, dogs get out. And unfortunately, some dogs, without even people's knowledge, have really been trained to fight. And the dog doesn't know any different, but, it puts other people and other animals at jeopardy. And, I was with John, Legislator Ferretti, that night after the dog did attack his mom's little dog, and just seeing how visibly upset he was, and his family, how upset they were, and then the thought of, God forbid, it was horrible that this dog attacked another dog, but God forbid that was one of his children, or his parent or whatever. And so it's just important, and it's important that other people in the neighborhood know that there's a dog here that is dangerous, and when they go by, they should be aware of it. And I know in John's neighborhood, word of mouth did spread as quickly as possible, but somebody new moves in the block and you don't think about it, or somebody just happens to take a different walkway, and this way, word is out there that dangerous dog does live there, and people can be able to be advised about it. So, I was happy to work on this with Legislator Ferretti, and I hope everybody's supportive of it. Thank you.
Legislator Drucker.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. What's great about our democracy is that we can respectfully disagree like we did 5 minutes ago, and then I could turn around and commend Legislator Ferretti on a great piece of legislation. I fully support this. As a dog lover my entire life, until recently when I moved, I was in a community walking my dogs a couple times a day, and it would have benefited me greatly to know which houses had dogs that had a propensity to be aggressive, because I could have altered my path. But thankfully I was never involved in a situation like Legislator Ferretti, although I have been involved in situations where I had to separate my dog from other dogs who were somewhat vicious, not to the level of the incident that you had, but giving people the knowledge and the wherewithal of protecting their animals is a great piece of legislation, so I commend you for that.
Okay, thank you, Legislator Drucker. Anyone else want to speak on this? Motion to close the hearing by Legislator Drucker, seconded by Legislator Schaefer. All in favor of closing the hearing signify by saying aye. Those opposed, carries unanimously. We'll go to a vote, which is item 5, a local law to establish the dangerous dog registry and to require certain notice with respect thereto. Moved by Legislator Ferretti, seconded by Legislator Legislator Walker. Any debate or discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed, carries unanimously. Before we move on to the next item, we wanted to recognize Chris Mistron. This is, I know he's retiring. I think it's his last day with us. I know that we have all enjoyed working with you. We've all appreciated the highly competent and intelligent and organized way that you've administered the programs under your jurisdiction. We've all appreciated your extra care and touch in terms of coming out to the public to make sure that some of the programs that you helped run for the county will run properly. So just on behalf of myself and all my colleagues, and I'm sure that some of them will chime in, I want to thank you for your service and your dedicated service, and I want to wish you all the best in retirement.
I, too, want to echo what Presiding Officer Nicolello has said. You know, Chris, you've been very instrumental in helping us be reminded about the importance of safety, especially with traffic safety. And, you know, I know that you helped with the rollout of the red light camera program, which was, some people may not agree with it, but it really has been a success. And I think, you know, with having your hand in on it, that ensured it. But also, more importantly, too, you know, the fact that you have gone out into the public with us. You helped install baby seats, which is very important. You showed parents how to safely strap their children into their cars to minimize the risk of any injury, God forbid, during any type of car accident. And I think that really means a lot. And I think to myself, how many babies and how many children you probably have saved over the span of your time while working in the county. And it just says a lot about you. You've always been somebody that we could count on, we can trust. And I have to say that you're going to be sorely missed. And you have big shoes that somebody has to fill, and good luck to them. All right, but good luck in your retirement. And thank you.
You know, I just wanted to jump in on that one in terms of the car seats. I think one of the most memorable events we had was when Legislator Turo was here. We had done a car seat check up in Glen Cove. And about an hour into the car seat check, a police officer had come back and had ended up mentioning to us, did you just do a car seat for a young lady? And gave us the name, and we were like, yes. And she's like, well, she just was in a serious crash up the road. The car actually got hit, turned over. And she said, we were stunned that the child was in the seat. Everything was fine. There was really minimal, there was no injuries, thank God. But when we had heard that, that was probably one of the best things that we ever heard, aside from there was a crash. But just that we knew that maybe we had an immediate event. So I do thank you.
Legislator Walker.
And Chris, I too want to wish you the very best in your retirement. And like I said at the last meeting, I will never forget the Sunday I called you and met you in the parking lot of Our Lady of Mercy School, where you were at your daughter's basketball game, and you helped me put the car seat in for my grandchild. And I hope you're not going too far away, because I just found out that my youngest daughter is expecting her first baby, and I'm going to need you to install another car seat. So I better have your phone number handy, and I could reach out to you. So God bless, and have a wonderful, wonderful retirement.
Thank you.
All right, good. Presiding Officer?
Sure. Go ahead, come on.
Thank you, Rich. I just want to thank Chris for his tremendous amount of commitment to our county and our residents. And I could tell you, I could speak from personal knowledge. My kids are 12 and 9 now, but many moons ago when they did ride in a car seat, I could never get the car seat right. It would be wobbly. I couldn't get the belt to be able to lock in properly. And I remember being in the parking lot of the legislature, and Chris looked at my car seat and was able to do it. My wife wouldn't let me drive the kids in my car because it was so wobbly. It was so bad. and Chris was able to fix the seat and get it installed properly. And I got to tell you, Chris, to this day, or not to this day, but to that moment when my kids were no longer in the car seat, I never touched that seat again. Like, you got it so perfect and so right. I told, if my wife needed to transfer the car seat, I said, we just got to buy another seat, and Chris has got to put that seat into, which Chris did. Because I never wanted to move that seat because it was locked perfectly, and I knew my kids were safe throughout their travels whenever they were with me in the car. But I just want to thank you, obviously from a personal note, but then also, I mean, the amount of lives and children that we have been able to protect through your diligence. I just want to thank you on behalf of my district and all county residents, Chris, and I wish you the best in your retirement. It's well deserved. I can't believe, when the first time I met you was many years ago, more than I want to count. And I just want to wish you the best in your future endeavors, and I hope you enjoy your retirement. Thank you so much.
I thank you. It was nice the first time we met in our teens, 30-something years ago. Now, the thing was, so when we talk about the child safety seats, the program had started back in '98. And in that time, we've done, in the fitting station here in Nassau County, we've done over 30,000 child safety seats. Of those, I did about 28,000 of them. It's been a very good program. When you made reference to the red light camera, which I know is very popular, we went out to all the legislative districts, and it was a pleasure to go out there and do the education and the discussion. And we took the slings and arrows. But it was a good program. I still stand by it being a good program, and the best part of it is we made it very transparent, and I think that was the most important thing, and that's why actually Nassau County has had the most success in the red light camera program because of its transparency. We were allowed legislatively to put up to 100 camera locations. We've never hit that. Because we were very diligent in the way of installing a camera unless we could prove that it was warranted and it could save lives, it could reduce crashes. We didn't put one. So although we were always allowed to do 100, we've never hit that number because we couldn't find the proper justification to do it. So I'm very proud of the program. People like Dave Rich over in TIFA had been outstanding in his administrative part of it, so it was a really good program.
Legislator Drucker, and I see Legislator Birnbaum up. So, I'm sorry. Legislator Drucker, Legislator Bino, then Legislator Birnbaum.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'll be quick. Chris, dedicated public servants like yourself for so many years are very hard to come by. And you have been a resource to this county and to the residents of Nassau County for so many years. Personally speaking, we as legislators, when we do events in our respective districts, we always sometimes, when we have to rely upon county officials to come and help us with these events, the most reassuring thing for me was coming to the car safety event and seeing you there, and knowing that the residents and constituents in my district were going to be well served was very reassuring to me. So I, for one, want to commend you. You are someone who deserves your retirement, and I hope you enjoy it in good health. But you will be sorely missed because your enthusiasm, the way you went about your job on a day-to-day basis, was unparalleled in my opinion. So good luck to you, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Chris, I want to wish you well in the next chapter of your life. I also want to take the opportunity to thank you. Thank you for not only providing the services that you were traditionally accustomed to presenting to us as legislators. I remember very early on in my tenure here, I contacted you because I was hosting a backpack event, a back-to-school event, and I talked to you about how we could improve safety in our community for our young cyclists, and we sat down and we came up with some really good ideas where you were able to partner with us and give us a whole bunch of resources for those young people, and more importantly, you gave me the idea of contacting a local bike shop that might come out and do the adjustments on the kids' bikes and make sure that the bikes were safe and ready for school. So for that, you know, it's a wonderful opportunity. We actually partnered with Cannondale, and they came every year and provided that service to us, and it was in part with your partnership. So I just want to just say thank you very much for all that you have done for the county residents, and I wish you well, and, you know, Godspeed.
Again, I thank you, and I think what you've listed and what you've just said, one of the most important things that we can do is to form partnerships. And there's a lot of organizations and there's a lot of people out there that could provide services and resources to the county. And I was never shy with the idea of sharing with other people. For the idea, I had no ego on this. And if I could find you somebody that could do something, and even if I could find somebody that could do it better than me, I would do that. And I think that through partnerships that we've had a lot of success over the years.
Legislator Birnbaum, Legislator Coppell, Legislator Kennedy, and Legislator Dirigi-Witt.
Chris, I just want to point out to everybody that I think what is so special about you is your compassion and the kindness you've always shown towards people. Whenever we did car safety seat checks together, you took the time to speak to each individual as if they were the only person you were helping that day, even though you've done this over and over again. And you could just tell by the way you spoke about your family. I know when you were in Great Neck, you would tell me stories about your son who went to the Merchant Marine Academy, and you'd speak so proudly about him, and your dad, who you were so proud of, who lived independently into his 90s. And even you with your health setbacks, never let that stop you. You were just always there, willing to help. And when I became a grandmother for the first time, I pulled my car up to my parking spot at the legislature, and you gladly met me there and helped to put the car seat in, because I had no idea why it was wobbling around, as Kavan said. I had no way of doing it. And you, 1, 2, 3, put pieces in, you cut up extra things to pad my car, and it was just incredible the way you took the time to do that, not just for me, but for everybody that you helped. So you will be sorely missed, but I really want to thank you for all that you've done for all the residents in Nassau County. You've touched a lot of people's lives. Thank you.
I want to thank you, but the other thing I wanted to add, I do have a little bit of bad news for you. I tried going to the Guinness Book and see if both you and I were the youngest grandparents on record, and we were told no. But I do thank you, and I did enjoy every moment and I looked forward to your calls many times. We also did a number of community open houses or open sessions, and I thought those also went very well.
Yep.
Chris, hi there. So you were just talking about grandparents and the Guinness Book of World Records. So I can take you back a little way, a couple years back, to when my daughter had twins, followed by 2 years later by triplets, and 5 car seats, and you got them into that van when nobody else could. Good thing none of them are having any twins and triplets anymore. But real expert, and the best part of it is we'll never know, but you probably saved a few lives along the way, of lives of young lives, promising lives, and thank you for everything.
No, thank you again, and I could tell you I'm looking forward to installing a car seat in another 4 months. I'm going to become a grandfather for the second time. I actually ended up getting a call from Tennessee, my son who's in the Navy, and to show you how the Navy works. It's a landlocked state, and the headquarters for the submarine service on the East Coast is in Memphis, Tennessee. Figure that one out. But that's where he's currently stationed, and I ended up getting a call from a fitting station in Tennessee when my daughter-in-law had to upgrade their seat, and he was asking me who I was and how did I get that seat in so well, and along the way we were kind of laughing, but I happen to have a certification number to do these seats that was in the first group that was given nationally, so I am in my number is 120. Currently they're issuing something like 100,000 something as the car seat text. So I was in the first group that was taught how to do this in 1998, and I thought it was a great program, and that's why I brought it to the county.
Legislator Kennedy, Legislator DeReggie Whitten.
Thank you. Hi, Chris. I just wanted to say thank you for everything that you have done. I think all your work over the years, as so many people today, so many legislators have said, I agree with everything. And I was thinking back on when I first met you, and I think it's a while. I think I was teaching still, and when you put that car seat in, I had no idea. I couldn't believe. I thought that everything would be fine, that, you know, it's wiggling around, but it should be okay. I've never seen anything like it. And then you came back and helped so many times, and the car needed to go back to be facing backwards, then facing forwards, and then incredibly, every single time I had one of those car seat safety checks in my district, so many people came out. And many, many times, some people who had not signed up showed up or called and said, would you mind if I could just come down? Really, really, I'm desperate in need of this. And you always said yes. You always helped out. You always stayed a little bit longer. And I want to thank you for that as well, because you were dedicated and you have always been dedicated. So I just want to say thank you, and enjoy your retirement, enjoy your kids, your grandkids, and just have fun. Thank you.
Legislator DeReggie Whitten, I think you'll get
I
the
have
last word.
a little known fact, I believe, about Chris, and that is not only does he give so much to the county, but he's also very much involved, and I'm going to botch the name, but of the young scientists who travel around, I guess it's an honors program, because I'm a proud aunt of one of them, Lauren DeReggie, and she absolutely adores you, and I think you showed your patience and your love and caring to those kids as well, because she's incredibly smart, but she's very reserved, to say the least, and you really made her feel comfortable and brought her out. And she went all over with you. I forget, up to Boston, I think, was it, and a few other locations. So not only does he give so much to the county, but it's the community as well. So thank you on behalf of Lauren DeReggie.
Thank you. What's being referred to is my degree is actually in physics, and years ago in my prior life I was a teacher, and I used to adjunct at New York Tech, and I taught physics in physics labs at New York Tech for 12 years, and part of it was while I was working. But one of the things is that over the past 11 years I've been the Science Olympiad coach over at Kellenberg High School, and so many times I'll shoot over there. I'll shoot over there after I'm done here, get there around 5-ish or so, and I'll stay for another hour or so, and I help them with their different projects and studies. And we do travel the Northeast on a number of competitions with other high schools, with other areas. Your niece there is a wonderful young lady, but the kids enjoy it, and it's something that I enjoy doing. And once this pandemic is over, I'm hoping that I could go back into the high school and assist with the science programs.
So you see, guys, that's why we had so many problems with car seats, because we're not physics teachers. So it does take a physics expert to get those darn things in. But anyway, thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you again, Chris.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Item number 3, a hearing on a proposed local law postponing the date of the 2021 sale of tax liens pursuant to Article 2 of Title B of Chapter 5 of the Nassau County Administrative Code. Moved by Deputy Presiding Officer Coppell, seconded by Legislator Bino. That's a motion to open the hearing. All in favor of opening the hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Hearing is open. This is an administrative initiative. Does anyone from the administration want to speak about it?
Good afternoon. I think Beaumont Jefferson is on the line.
Okay. He would be the guy.
Beaumont?
Hi, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear? Great. Okay, so is this 46-21?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, so 46-21 is this local law seeks to postpone our annual tax lien sale. The tax lien sale is usually held the third Tuesday of February, which would have been February 16th. The postponement of this sale would allow residents and Class 4 property owners to enough time to pay any delinquent taxes. The postponement of the sale, the proposed date would be a date in early May to be TBD. And this would just ensure that everyone who is experiencing hardship benefits from this additional time to pay any delinquent taxes.
Okay. Any questions for Beaumont? All right, and the only question I had is that there's a slight discrepancy, I think, from what I'm told, that this law postpones the tax lien sale to May 3rd, and my understanding is the state has postponed tax lien sales until May 10th. So is that a conflict? Is that a problem?
No, we haven't set the date yet. Legislator Nicolello, the date has not been set at this time. The date would be the date could be any date after I believe that hold on one second, let me just check the date.
Beaumont, it's Katie. The legislation says shall be sold on or about May 3rd.
On or about, meaning that you have some leeway there?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so whatever you do will be obviously consistent with state law.
We would not have the sale before the state date. So it would be after the date in the state, the governor's COVID emergency eviction act. We would schedule it after that date.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Any legislators have any questions or discussion? All right, I think we're good. Motion to close the hearing by Legislator Coppell, seconded by Legislator Bino. All in favor of closing the hearing signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Carries unanimously. We'll go to number 6, which is the vote on the proposed local law. It is a local law postponing the date of the 2021 sale of tax liens pursuant to Article 2 of Title B of Chapter 5 of the Nassau County Administrative Code. Moved by Legislator Bino, seconded by Deputy Presiding Officer Coppell. Any further debate or discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Those opposed? Carries unanimously. Okay, we have 2 items left on the calendar. They are both ordinances. They are both ordinance relating to the Coliseum. At our request, they were broken up into 2 separate items, but at this time we'll call them together so we can discuss them together. Item 7 is an ordinance authorizing the county executive on behalf of the County of Nassau to execute a 3rd amendment to the amended and restated Coliseum lease between the county as landlord and Nassau Events Center LLC as tenant. 8 is an ordinance authorizing county executive on behalf of the county to execute a 4th amendment to the amended and restated Coliseum lease between the county of Nassau as landlord and Nassau Events Center LLC as tenant. So those items are moved by Legislator Schaefer, seconded by Legislator McKevitt, and they are now before the legislature.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Good afternoon, legislators, Minority Leader Kevon Abrahams. I'm Evelyn Simmons, Deputy County Executive for Economic Development. Hope you can hear me okay. Combination of mask and some serious dental work, so I'll do the best I can here this afternoon. But we truly appreciate the opportunity to discuss these 2 important linked items that are intended to address the very real and ongoing impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on the operations of the Coliseum and the Hub project. in terms of both lost time and lost revenue, while positioning the building and the hub redevelopment site for future success. If you don't mind, we're just going to go through the history on the lease and the DPA and a brief summary, but it'll only take a few minutes. Obviously, this project is at the heart of the county executive's economic development strategy, and the success of the effort, which we've undertaken collaboratively with the legislature, is important now more than ever. As you know, in 2013, the county granted NEC a long-term lease for the Coliseum. It included provisions for future development rights at the Nassau Hub, Section 54, financing of Coliseum renovations, and standard leasehold lender protections, which is found in Schedule J of the lease. In 2015, the legislature approved a restated Coliseum lease, which allowed the tenant to secure financing for Coliseum renovations through an EB-5 lender, a Visa program lender, as opposed to a traditional bank. That same year, NEC did in fact retain such financing from an EB-5 program financer known as Nassau Coliseum Funding 100. In 2019, we were all together for the passage and signing of the development plan agreement. That agreement designated Nassau Hub Developer a partnership between NEC, our tenant, and developer RXR to pursue redevelopment of the hub site. That document set project milestones and some important first dates, including January 7th, 2021, that just passed, for completion of certain project documents. The document also provided for legislative approval of specific project documents and agreements, everything to come back to you: Community Benefits Advisory Committee documents, project labor agreements, and all the rest. Leading up to the COVID-19 pandemic, our hub developer, the partnership of NEC and RXR, were really continuing to advance the project very well, and they met several important milestones, including helping the county secure $85 million for structured parking garages and filing important documents with the town of Hempstead, including a conceptual master plan that's pending action as we speak. Then came 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the state's March shutdown of all non-essential businesses, including the Nassau Coliseum. In June, the Coliseum's tenant, NEC, issued a lights-out announcement, which was obviously very discouraging, that they would no longer not only not operate the Coliseum, they were not interested in participating in the hub redevelopment project any longer. They proceeded to default on their $100 million loan to Nassau Coliseum Funding, and they also defaulted on their lease to the county to the tune of $2.2 million for rent and utility payments. After negotiations and a settlement in lieu of foreclosure between NEC and the lender, in August of 2020, the leasehold lender, Nassau Coliseum Funding 100, cured NEC's rent default to the county. Their designee, Nassau Live Center, LLC, stepped into the shoes of NEC as Coliseum tenant by operation of the lease provision I mentioned before, Schedule J, and Nassau Live took on all aspects of the restated Coliseum lease, as well as the borrower obligations under the EB-5 loan. The administration assured that as part of the settlement, Nassau Live took assignment of important contracts relating to the building operations and maintenance, including with arena operator ASM, the New York Islanders, and the Long Island Nets. These steps avoided foreclosure, protracted litigation, time, and expense, and in fact paved the way for the Islanders to return to the Coliseum last month in January. Nassau Live also agreed to develop a plan for sustained Coliseum operations and partner with RXR on the hub site project. We're extremely pleased that the state is now allowing arenas to reopen at 10% occupancy to fans. Nassau Live is actively working with the Islanders to bring some fans back to the Coliseum. But it's a limited number of fans at 10%. We're looking at about 1,400 individuals to be allowed to come and watch the Islanders play. We remain committed to more events and more audiences, but at this point we expect the process to be slow as we await further guidance, testing, vaccine availability, and increased public confidence about returning to live venues. We also recognize that successful operation of the Coliseum is dependent on restarting of live sports and entertainment more generally, not just here locally, but regionally and across the country. And the timing for all of that remains uncertain, unfortunately. And finally, formulating a long-term plan for successful operation of the Coliseum will require a close look at the new UBS Belmont Arena coming online at the end of this year. Another project we're very excited about, but it would be wise to consider that in our future plans for the Coliseum. For all these reasons, the administration proposes interim adjustments to the lease and the DPA to address the real and ongoing impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I can just go through the main provisions of each of the two documents. Item 5121 is the third amendment to the amended and restated Coliseum lease. That document grants the tenant temporary rent relief during a COVID relief period, during which time they will not pay the annual minimum rent of $4 million per year. Percentage rent for any revenues made within the building remain payable to the county. The period extends until 6 months after New York pause restrictions are fully lifted on Coliseum operations, such that there can be 100% occupancy in the building, with an outside date of 12/31/22. During this period, Nassau Live must comply with all other lease obligations. This includes payment of utilities, keeping the Coliseum in good order, maintaining the contractual obligations we referenced before, like having the Islanders play, and a contract with ASM. Nassau Live must also work diligently on a longer-term plan for the Coliseum and the Hub. Any further adjustments to the financial or other terms of the lease will be brought back to the legislature. Finally, that amendment also includes indemnification to the county by the EB5 lender in connection with any potential claims by investors associated with the EB5 financing and the assignment and assumption of the lease by Nassau Live. The second item, 5221, is a fourth amendment to the amended and restated Coliseum lease, which introduces a first amendment to the development plan agreement. That's Exhibit A to the document. That will extend the first outside date for the completion of certain hub agreements until the later of July 7, 2021, or the end of the COVID-19 relief period I referenced earlier. It also replaces NEC as RXR's development partner with Nassau Live developer and provides for a future substitution with an affiliate of the leasehold lender as may be approved by the legislature. Together, the lease and DPA amendments give Nassau Live and RXR appropriate and necessary interim relief during this historic pandemic, a little breathing room, so they can continue to work collaboratively on longer-term plans for the building as an integral part of the hub site. We understand you've been briefed on some active discussions regarding a longer-term plan for the Coliseum, including with third parties in the entertainment space for programming in and around the building. The idea is to create an exciting new entertainment district at the hub, with the Coliseum at center stage. This would combine with the planned innovation district with Northwell Health, housing, and vibrant public amenities to truly transform the hub. We expect the team will not need the time provided for in these agreements, and it is in everyone's mutual interest that they move quicker. Together, we can ensure that the hub actually becomes the economic driver we've always wanted it to be, and a place where people can gather in a post-COVID world, as we've always envisioned. In closing, we ask for your support of the proposed amendments to preserve this important county asset and keep our plans for the future on track. Thank you, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Evelyn. We appreciate that presentation, including the history. I think that was a good refresher for us to have.
You need a chart to keep track of all the agreements, right?
With respect to the amendment that's extending their time, the NLC's time in which it won't have to pay rent through December 31st, 2022, if the restrictions are not lifted in the 6-month grace period. It seems like a long way out. Why was that date picked?
Well, technically, the date of 12/31/22 is the outside date.
Right.
The date is really tied to whenever we have 100% occupancy in the Coliseum. And the reason we did that is, well, first of all, we expect them to act quicker. Number one, it is absolutely in the new tenant and the developer's best interest to get this building operational and running and making money as soon as possible. We're all aligned in this, right? So you were briefed, and I think you know there's active discussions going on what that longer-term plan looks like. So when they bring forth a longer-term plan for the building and the operations in connection with the hub, we expect that we'll receive also a request for something around rent, right? Some kind of an adjustment of some sort. And we just felt that it's extremely important to sort of keep the two things tied together: the plan for the building, in connection with the hub site, and then tied to COVID. But we don't think the time is excessive because we don't expect to need it, to be frank.
When the 1,000 people are allowed back into the arena, that does accrue some revenue. Will the county share in that in terms of concessions or no parking?
Yes, I mean,
it's not a lot. It won't be a lot of money, but will that?
It really won't be, because when you think about it, I mean, concessions, there will not be concessions in the traditional sense from what we understand of what the state is approving in terms of the operation of these buildings for these limited number of fans. It's like a grab and go. You know, you take the little snack and you take it to your seat. So we're not talking about mass consumption of beverages and food. So for 1,400 people, I don't think there'll be much. But yes, the county would share, 8% of revenues and 12% on any parking, as we do under the lease right now.
We understand that much has changed since the original agreements, and even since some of the amendments. You have Belmont, which obviously is a game changer in many ways, but obviously the major impact has been COVID. So we understand why there has been delays, and there's going to be some sort of shift. There will be a shift in the vision to some extent. My question is, when they come up with a more formal plan, will that come back to the legislative body for approval?
Yeah. So we always contemplated, right, that there was the plan, and a conceptual master plan is pending before the town of Hempstead right now. And the development team is contemplating some tweaks to that plan, but no major revisions. We're still looking at, 500 units of housing, commercial space, Northwell Innovation District, entertainment district. We had always talked about an entertainment district. Reasons to bring people to the site as a destination before and after what's happening in the Coliseum. And it's going to be, much more lively and much more focused. But we always contemplated in the development plan agreement that the documents on the finances of that deal, how many acres are they going to use for, let's say, an entertainment district, what the cost of that is in terms of whether it's a lease or the agreement, would always come back to the legislature. We always contemplated that, as would the resulting community benefits agreement, project labor agreements, and all of that was always intended to come back to you. And essentially, we're just moving the timeline. I also want to point out that there was a force majeure provision in the development plan agreement that would have brought us to January. It was 6 months would have brought us to June 7th of 2021. So they missed the deadline of January 7th, but we did just build in that existing force majeure and then tie it to the same COVID relief period, because we felt that keeping everyone aligned, building tenant, hub developer, and the county, on pushing this plan as much as we can, as quickly as we can in the midst of a pandemic, is the way to go.
You mentioned some of the changes with respect to the development, but if there's a change a major change with respect to how the Coliseum itself is operating, does that come back to us as well?
Yep.
It does, okay.
Sure. No, it would be part of their long-term, we called it a sustained plan for operations of the Coliseum, and absolutely that would come to the legislature. Anything that I would say, and the lawyers can correct me here, that changes the terms of what they're expected to do inside that building, which is outlined in the lease itself.
Okay. With respect to NLC, or the lender who is now stepping in there, we've come a long way since Bruce Ratner was the party with whom the county contracted, and he had vast experience in developing arenas. So this lender, and I spoke to Nick Mastriani. They won't be running, and they aren't running the Coliseum, right? They bring in an entity that knows how to operate a facility of this kind, correct?
That's correct, Presiding Officer. Right now, as I mentioned, they have a contract in place with ASM, which is an experienced company that runs arenas, that was in the building even before under Onexum NEC. I think there's levels to this that people forget. And so ASM has been on the scene, they're continuing to be on the scene, and they would likely be. And I think the good news is that Mr. Mastriani sees the investment opportunity and the possibilities of the hub site redevelopment. And we're discouraged that the former tenant chose to move in a different direction, but I think that the fact that someone stepped in as quickly as he did, sees the potential here, and is excited about it, and working collaboratively with our hub developer, this is all good news for the project.
I think, I think we understand that the pandemic obviously has delayed the project to some extent, and obviously the world has changed a lot in 12 months. So I would tend to be supportive of this. I'm reassured that RXR remains fully committed to this project. They are, 20 years ago, they were a major Long Island regional developer. Now they're a major developer, period, New York City, et cetera. So it's good to have a partner of that size and that was wherewithal be committed to the project. And they have they've expressed their willingness to continue to work with the town of Hempstead, work with the community. So I think that all inures to our benefit. So.
Thank you. Agree.
Anyone else have any questions, comments? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. I guess any questions for Josh is here, so. All right. Thank you again. Very nice presentation. Good to see you, Josh. What? That's all. I think it was all part of one presentation. Sure. Okay. You guys better move back up.
Hello.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Hi,
I wasn't sure how we were doing this. I thought
Okay.
we were just doing the Coliseum first and then the residential second. But I was also debriefed in a phone call with Mr. Reckler, and that was helpful. And I understand the numbers are a little bit vague at this point. Like, we don't really know the exact amount of rent we'll be getting going forward, and we don't know a number of the other impacts of these changes. But one thing that I know my colleague, Legislator Bino, is going to touch on is the agreement we had with the communities surrounding the Coliseum, and we had a pretty good formula which she'll go over with the square footage. And in the beginning, I thought Mr. Regulator said yes, we're keeping that, and then at the end, I heard, if I heard it correctly, because I was having some technical difficulties at my home with the internet, I heard him say something like, "Well, we'll discuss it later." So.
It's still in the agreement, and there's been no change. So that would be surprising to me.
Terrific. And again, I have to say the connection was terrible, so which I always have on the North Shore. So I don't know if I misheard him, but I wanted to just get that on the record.
Yeah,
so.
no, I'll go on the record on two things. I mean, in terms of the rent for the building, we're waiving the $4 million annual rent. But again, we continue to keep revenues and a share of revenues from any building activities and parking coming into the county, and we will absolutely be revisiting that when they make the plan for a longer-term, non-COVID period for the Coliseum, which we all hope will happen sooner rather than later.
Do we have any reassurance that it'll be somewhere in the $4 million range?
I don't think we can really say that. I mean, I do think, people can keep me honest here, but the revenues in the building were not all that far off from the $4 million revenue for many years, or at least a few years in the recent past. So, sort of a minimum was set based on some calculation of revenues. But we would have to look again at what exactly is being proposed for the building, what the expected revenues are, projected revenues, which we would expect the tenant and our hub developer to prepare those materials for us and submit something. And then we would negotiate what's reasonable based on what the intended use is.
So after we vote today, though, we're sort of, I kind of see this as a little backwards, just because I see it as we're kind of selling our house and then we're finding out what we're getting paid for later. But I mean, just to. So
we're keeping our house in good order, Legislator. I mean, this is a very, very unprecedented time, and we have a county asset that we need to maintain. There's $2 million in costs just to run the utilities in the building that if they don't pay, the county has to pay.
I know. I was aware of the fact that no one paid, and the refrigerators.
Again, we're trying not to make the loss worse. We're trying to hold firm, take a pause, give some breathing room to the folks who are in there trying to do the right thing. I mean, our new tenant came on the scene and has done what he needs to do to get the building open for the Islanders to play, did the ice, even fixed the name of on the ice when he didn't get it quite right the first time. They went back and fixed it. They've opened up the parking lots a few different times when we've asked them to for food distributions, and they're open to other ideas that have come up about vaccination centers. So they've been sort of playing by the rules collaboratively with us, and we feel that this is appropriate. And there'll be more on this. We promise we'll be back to you.
I understand. I just wanted to have some idea financially what we were going to expect. There's just two quick questions. Well, first of all, I appreciate the fact that they let us have our Toys for Tots
Toys for Tots,
collection there.
exactly.
We collected 100,000 toys this year, and I know I mentioned to Mr. Reckler also that, you know, that doesn't go unnoticed, and I've been at the food distributions, as many of my colleagues have. And, you know, it's a perfect location for it.
It is.
Just two things. One, I also heard something about reducing the number of seating in the Coliseum.
So the development team and the current tenant are looking at all options for for reactivating the Coliseum in a way that's going to be successful, right? So we all know Belmont's coming online at the end of the year, 18,000 seat venue, and we have a almost 14,000 seat venue here at Nassau Coliseum. And so what they're looking at is ways to ensure that the two venues complement each other rather than compete. and they're talking to third parties and others who may have ideas in that regard about what kinds of programming would be good in that building. There does seem to be a hole in the market in Nassau County on Long Island for a 6,000 to 8,000 seat venue, because I think you're all very familiar with the venues, and there really is a hole. But that's not to say that there's anything firm on that. They're just looking at it, and we encourage them to, because I think those types of, thoughtful discussions about what will be the most successful is what we would want to hear. But obviously, if you're going to move seats out, you'd have to make up the revenue in some other way. So more to come on that, legislator. We're just not there yet.
So again, as the presiding officer mentioned, before any seats are removed, you would have to come before us again?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Sustained
right.
operational plan tied to any adjustments longer term in the rent. This is a pause that's tied to COVID.
Okay. And just as a side note, and I mentioned this to Mr. Regler, we've had a lot of complaints with the prior facility operator that it was very difficult to get a receipt for the parking, nor was there any clear way to see how they were keeping track of how many cars they had per event. And I think it was something that we could have run into trouble with. So I just really hope that going forward we have a really clear plan. I mean, in this day and age, technology can count the number of cars.
Yeah, I think my understanding is that if it was a credit card purchase, it was recorded, but sometimes they were cash. And we've raised the issue, and we'll keep an eye out with the new tenant as well.
I appreciate it, because we do get a percentage
Absolutely.
of that.
No, I
and
appreciate you bringing it to our attention.
And the last thing, which I did mention, just, you know, with the PPP payments, there's so much money that's available. We just want to keep an eye to see if this new tenant does receive that, because I think if that's the case, then maybe the county should have a little bit more of, a rent paid to them, to us, because that's really what those types of, situations and payments are made for, to pay the rent. So
understood. We asked them, they did not apply for any PPP in 2020 and don't have any current plans in 2021. They are looking at there's a new, under the Stimulus Act passed at the end of the year, there's a shuttered venue operators grants program that they're looking at. It seems not really for sports arenas. So they have to make a case that they're under a certain threshold on sports. But we don't know whether they'll end up being even eligible. But we would expect that any grant, any revenue that comes in, we would look at that when we readjust rent at some point.
Yeah, I think that should definitely, we should just state that has to be disclosed. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other legislators?
I think Legislator Bino.
Legislator Bino.
Thank you.
Sometimes it's difficult to see with the glasses.
I know. Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Simmons, DC Tim Simmons. I'm not going to speak to the CBA because it's memorialized in the agreement and you've said it on the record. There was some language that kind of made members of the caucus a little uncomfortable, but you've just reaffirmed on the record, so thank you. The only thing that I would like to state is that the momentum that was really, I think, inspiring a lot of excitement around the hub development through the development, through the committee for the CBA and some of the subcommittees. I understand why some of that has to pause because we need to kind of regroup and kind of decide how the development will move forward. but both myself and Legislator McKevitt, who are very active on that subcommittee, I think we should work together, you know, to figure out which subcommittee should continue some level of work.
That's a good idea.
In particular, I would say the Workforce Development Committee. This is an excellent time for that committee to start its training exercises and making sure that, you know, we have boots on the ground ready to run and hit the ground running so that they can start working as soon as the development is ready. And some of those training programs, I understand, could be 18 months out and the like. So I think it's a good idea that we start looking at which subcommittees should start working again.
I think that's a great idea, Legislator, and I'll talk to the development team about getting that going. I mean, just pops in my head on, you know, workforce development. If we are still very much looking forward to a Northwell Innovation Center there, and the county has been supporting Nassau Community College, some scholarships in the healthcare area to help people get retrained to enter the field.
Absolutely.
So if we can, you know, and they're involved in those committees as are both you and Legislator McKevitt. So I completely agree and look forward to those discussions.
Including like Long Island Ascend. They were working with small businesses to make sure that they...
Yeah, we shouldn't stop that work, and I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do any other legislators have any questions or comments? No. Thank you again, Evan.
Okay, thank you.
I'm now going to call for a vote on items 7 and 8. All in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? We have a unanimous vote in favor. That's the end of our business for today, so we need a motion to adjourn, which is the specialty of Legislator Rhodes. Second of Legislator Drucker. All in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Was it bad there? Still not bad. Thanks for pointing it out with Chris. I missed that, and I think he deserved the recognition. Yeah, the mask and stuff, you mean, you see the top of his head.